This is the Lambda Cartel. Today I am your host, Pablo Rivera, and with me is the very smart and unapologetic Scott Nimrod. How do you like that intro, Scott?
I don't know what to think of it.
Hey, I wanted to spice it up a little bit for our listeners now that we're picking up a lot of steam. Thanks to everybody who has reached out to us on Twitter. We appreciate your comments, your positive vibes, and you know, all I can say is stay tuned for bigger and better things. With that in mind, we're going to be talking about getting things done, how the remaining 20% of a software project always ends up taking 80% of the time, and I've never been able to grasp like the mathematics behind that.
It's the pattern of the universe.
It always up being true. It doesn't matter how much you plan, you always end up spending a lot of time tying things together, tying all the knots together. So what's going on the front end, Scott? How's that going in terms of that?
Well, I'm really, really close to having the initial V1 done on the front end. Like when I say close, like I think by next Friday, I could say that I have subscriptions implemented, which is like the last feature for V1. Like I'm really close. And at the same time, I'm running into just compiler issues of dependencies and not quite sure how to resolve it even when I go to the documentation. And so it's a death by 1,000 paper cuts, which is always the case. That's analogous to this, 20% takes 80% of the time, and I'm busy working a contract full time, and I've been a really good boy not to mix business hours for the client with open source project for Moonlight. And so, I can honestly say that I can really appreciate what it means on the business side to just get something there. I've always sat on the craftsman side of the house where no, it's not going to get there until it's ready to get there. When it's polished, when it's well crafted, when I can sit back and smile at it and kiss it, And right now I'm at the point where, damn that.
You can taste it. Yeah, you can test it.
I want it to
you're
be
like,
good enough.
Yeah, you're like, I can taste this already. I just want to get it done.
Yes.
So, but the death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's interesting that you bring that up in such a way, because that's the same experience I'm having on the back end. So you know how, like you just explained with Elm, you're just going through a discovery process of what works and what doesn't work and how to get it to work. And I assume that there's a lack of documentation due to how niche Elm actually is, because it's a very niche language and it's relatively new, and it's the same on the back end. So death, I mean, we could change Nikeza slogan.
I'm bleeding out.
like death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's really, not to complain or anything, but it's a really annoying process, and it just shows how polished and how much work goes into producing a technology, a framework, a language that is actually simple to pick up and allows for productivity. Not only for busy work, which is what we're doing, but actual productivity where you say, okay, I want to do this, and you could actually achieve it. Right? And you're not fighting the language, the compiler, the library, the framework, the documentation. And you learn to appreciate those things.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like I'm not getting paid an hourly rate to do this. I'm in South Beach. There's women walking around in G-string bikinis, and I'm like in my crib, hacking away on this freaking thing called Elm. And much respect to the programming language and the people that built it, but like, you talk about opportunity costs, and I keep trying to remind myself that this is going to make me a better person, a better developer, and I need to be a finisher. Period.
That's true.
So
That's
man
true.
up, get it done. And I say that out loud to myself.
You are that. I mean, it's so eloquent. I mean, it's just. Oh my God! That's. I just can't. You just killed my mind with that thought. But okay.
On my part, it's the truth.
I know. Of course, that's how you feel, and I mean, certainly, for me, it's the same, except, the South Beach, the ladies, the beach.
You're in Puerto Rico, same thing, no?
Yeah. But I have other initiatives.
Okay.
I have other focuses, like I like to work on cars through weekends, or work on robots, which is basically software, but at least I can throw the damn thing if it doesn't work. Or do just hang out with my family.
There you go.
Yeah. But so I mean, it's just the amount of work that you have to do in order to get that last 20% is just paramount. It's just crazy. I mean, last night,
we're not even talking about integration.
Absolutely.
We're still working silos or sandboxes.
Yeah, we don't even know if we're working in parallel, right? You're probably going east, and we're probably going west.
No, it'll line up.
I know. It will eventually line up, but like I sat down. I was in my office up until I think 2 a.m. working on the Nikesa backend, because I finally got the backend integration with WordPress working. So for those of you who don't know, Nikesa will you will subscribe to a WordPress blog, and we're using the RSS feed, which is actually an XML document, and we will we process that. We dump it to JSON so that that content is passed on to the front end, which is where Scott is working his magic. So
Voodoo.
So it has been difficult, because one, I'm practically new to F#. I'm also, I feel like I'm even though I've worked with .NET before, I feel like I'm new to it again. So everything is new to me, and so I feel going around the NAM, like there's no consistent a pattern that I could do, or I kind of go from A to B. I just go from A to F to Z to G, and then to B, and finally arrive. And it's taken, it has not only taken a lot of effort, but I have to swallow my pride in a big way, because this is something I was telling Adam about. Adam Wright, one of the members of the Cartel. Like, Adam, I'm used to being very productive, being very independent. I'm used to delivering what people ask from me, and not have to bother others, for help. I do ask for feedback. Sometimes, like everybody, I do get stuck and I ask for people, but I'm very respectful of everybody's time. And so for me, asking you for help, I feel like I'm stealing your productivity. And I've had to swallow that and just say, please, somebody come help. And, again, like you have helped, Adam has helped, Mitch has helped. I haven't bothered Odie because we're in very different time zones. But it's been a journey. It's been asking questions. It's been looking at, thinking about the idea, knowing what I want to do, but not knowing how to actually do it. And then going into a broken documentation. And wait, I think I should be more. I think I should treat Microsoft in this regard better. I think I've been too strong on them. I'm not going to say broken documentation. I'm going to say
developing documentation.
Yeah,
emerging documentation.
Emerging. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things is that I've been really hard on them, but it's that frustration of adopting something that's early and wanting to be productive and wanting to be a beacon of light, within that project, within the Kazan, within the whole .NET Core ecosystem. Having that drive that just turns it into a bit sour, frustrating, the fact that a lot of things are missing. But you have to learn to be patient and hey, at least there's some documentation. And so building this thing on the back end, this WordPress integration, working with XML, thinking about it functionally. And another thing is that, since F# is a multi-paradigm language, I don't want to introduce OOP concepts. I don't want to introduce imperative concepts to the backend because we're doing it as functional. So, like, how do I do this functionally? How do I approach this from a functional? How do I do this in a way that it's idiomatic? And that's another thing. I mean, there's a big gray area of what idiomatic F# really is, and I've been writing a blog post about that very subject for a couple of months because I just keep coming up with things and realizing how complicated idiomatic F# actually is. And so not complicated the language, but the whole situation. And so it's like death by 1,000 papercuts. I mean, this last 20%, at least last night, I was able to take the code I wrote because I was working on a console application in order to get it running, to then take that code and port it over to the Nikesa backend. And so last night I was working on the Nikesa backend, added the code, and I stopped barely before doing .NET build and see if it would run, because I was just tired. And if I did .NET build and that .NET run, I know I would have stayed up all night. So that 20%, I mean, it's.
Are you like me? I'm not putting Elm on my resume until I get this done.
I mean, I'm not putting Elm or F# in my resume until I deliver. Forget Nikesa. I want to deliver at least a couple of libraries.
Nah, once I deliver a full throttle working app that has users, it goes on my resume. No one can take that from me. So like this, there's a lot of significance behind this for me. Mm-hmm. I wanted to belong to an elite set of developers that have delivered into production an open source project. I want that more than anything.
So you feel that makes you elite? That you feel that makes you stand out in a way?
Well, everything's in perspective, right? To me, I look up to them. If I have to look up, then they're elite to me.
Okay. So that's an interesting thought. And so let's talk a little bit about that, because there's, in software there is that segregation. I think it would be the right word, of people who use source code and people who haven't. And not everyone looks up to those that have, because everybody has their own painters, right? And to each their own. But I also share the fact of looking up to open source maintainers, not only as people to emulate in terms of contributing to, with code with others, but as people from whom I learn from, right? And so you saying that I want to join those friends, it's really interesting. So as somebody who's like, this is your first open source project, and every time I say open source project, I cringe a little, because we haven't actually added an open source library, license to the repo. So that's on our to-do list. So as somebody who's doing this for the first time, can you tell me more about your thought process? Like, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? What's going on in your mind?
Yeah. So, well, here's a rhetorical question. How do you want to be remembered? Okay. I look at my life as more than one obituary at the end, right? Unlike the masses, I consumed the 40-hour work week. I lived it before, and yeah, I want to retire soon, So with that said, I want to have an obituary for me retiring from software development. I want to be remembered for the contributions that I made to the software development community and well, to the technology that the world leverages, right? So that's something that weighs on my mind, is how do I want to be remembered when I leave the game, when I leave this industry,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Someone else is, the obstacle is the way, right? And so if the obstacle is the way, and if mainstream continues to deny me, and they always say that, you're not ready for this, you're not qualified for this, just because of my shell, just because of my appearance, just because of the way I talk. Well, I look at this as, okay, well, let me show you, all right? Let me show you why you missed out and why you decided to pass on me. Let me show you why you shouldn't be sleeping on me, right?
That's an interesting point, and let me just jump in real quick. There's a project called for Mac. Oh my God, I just which is Homebrew, which is the package manager for Macs. The developer behind that, Google declined it. Like, Google passed on the guy who built the tool for Mac, for development on Mac. Like, Google said, no, you're not good enough for us. Like, you can pass our interview. And wait, not only that guy, but one of the creators from the Bootstrap framework, which is this huge project. I mean, I'd say top 25 projects in open source in the last years. He was declined by, I think, Airbnb, because he couldn't do a binary or something on their interview. So,
and in addition to that, the one that wrote, I believe, Durandal, and then he wrote Aurelia, that competes with Angular 2.0. I thought when I listened to Hanselman's, what's that really popular podcast that he has?
Minutes?
No, it's the other one, the really good one that they spend. I said the really good one. That they spend a lot of time editing.
I did not say that. That was not Pablo. That was Scott.
It's called Developer something. But anyway, yeah, my understanding was he was he was passed on by Yahoo. Oh, no, he wrote jQuery. The person that wrote jQuery was
Oh
passed on
yeah,
by
John
Yahoo.
Vessig.
Okay, so
Yeah, yeah, I know
I'm
that.
confusing developers, but yeah, he was
And
passed on
so,
by Yahoo.
which jQuery, which is the JavaScript library. Forget about everything out there. This is like, so jQuery, I think it's almost at the level of Linux at this point, in terms of this thing is everywhere.
So the point that I wanted to stress is like I've been denied so many opportunities, and part of my French, but it's always been BS. And the majority of the opportunities or the majority of the gatekeepers that have denied me are people that don't speak software development, but somehow they're in the good old boy club, and they're the decision makers. You go figure. So to make a long story short, not to vent too much on that, it's like, okay, well, you know what? No one is going to tell me what I can and can't do unless it's the government, period. Okay, so with that said, no one can tell me that I don't have experience building a team of top achievers, right? So, part of my language was fuck it. You know what I mean? Yeah, I said it. If I can't do it in corporate America, then I'll do it in open source. No one's going to take that from me, And so far, we've pulled together what I believe is with the top 10% of developers. I really do believe that, and people can challenge me on it, right?
So what you're saying, let's try and summarize a little bit. My understanding is that you see open source not only as a way to learn to develop your skills, but also as a gateway to escape into greatness.
More of if they're not going to open up a path for me to demonstrate how awesome I am, and they're not going to accept the experience that I already have, just because I'm not a quote unquote cultural fit, then you know what? They're not the only path.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's
my whole life has been fighting. I find alternate routes.
Yeah, I've come to have a similar experience where you get denied for whatever reason, and then you come back and you build something, and then have this overwhelming amount of proof, but somehow that's still not enough. And ultimately, I just realized that some people are built to be corporate drones, and some people are just built to be individual drones, right? Like some of us just have to branch out, and others have to be corporate. And wanting to be, if you are somebody who works better individually, who works better as a contractor, as a consultant, or having your company and delivering a product, trying to fit that mold of fitting into a corporate mold or mindset, it's really difficult. And using and open source is a way for you to escape that reality as well, because when you work when you have a day job, when you work for a company, you can also use open source to fulfill your inner desires to do something better, because you're not,
and to work with people that are good.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean,
that's one of the biggest things, is working with just people
who care about the craft, and they're not doing it just to appease the desire of the project manager. Because I've been there, I've said, and this is not going to sound so good, but we're talking about delivering that last 20% of a project, and meeting deadlines. Sometimes you just have to commit bad code against your will, but you have to do it in order to survive.
I would change that to, sometimes you have to commit code that works even though it's malformed.
Yeah, but but in my head it's bad code because it, you know, like a 1910 or no, a 1920 Ford Model T works, but it's still bad engineering because it's very crude, right? For its time, it was a marvel, but for, you know, for these days, it's not great.
Was it tested? That's
Yeah,
the only thing.
yeah.
Like, if it's not tested, I'm not going to commit to it if a client is paying me professionally. But anyway,
Of course. No, but of course, like, but you can still have bad code that has unit tests.
Right, but the whole thing is, as long as you're testing the behavior and not the implementation details, you still have an opportunity to go back if time allows to.
But that's the problem. The time allows. The time allows. And in a lot of teams, that like time is treated. You know, of course, time is the most valuable resource, but time is just, you know, there's just a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of processes that people follow. There's a lot of personal issues that you have to work with. You know, I've had issues where the project manager asks for something, and I say I can't deliver that during that time frame, and so I now have an enemy. And so I'm not only working against the deadline, but I have the weight of that enemy from now forward. And so open source, the beauty of it is that you can express yourself creatively. And if you manage it well, because there is a dark side to open source too. And if you manage it well, you can release all that pressure. Biggest problem, like the dark side of open source is that the moment your project becomes semi-famous or semi-important, or people rely on it, it's the moment that they start treating you as if you were their servant, because you're doing that for free. And you know, a lot of developers out there don't know how to handle that. I've learned to handle that, and these days, if you ask anything from me in terms of open source, if you ask nicely, and I think it's a worthwhile endeavor for me to take on, I will do it within my time frame. But if you ask, you know, if you're rude or you're a company or anything, you better understand that you are going to pay up my rate, not your rate, my rate. You know, and that's it. And so going back to that 20% delivering, it's I mean, wow. So we're going to deliver this Mikesa 1.0. In my mind, it's a 0.1. You say 1.0, but in my mind, it's a 0.1. But don't worry, like all of my projects.
Let's call it a preview.
Like they're either beta or production in my head. So once, like, getting to that 1.0, it's not only been a challenge in terms of the technology, but when working with other people who you basically don't have a previous relationship with, it's an undertaking.
You don't have a previous relationship with them.
No, but even I know, but what I follow them on Twitter. I've known you for a couple of months, but I don't really know you in a sense. You know, like you don't call me when you're stressed out and you're like, oh, Pablo, you want to talk, or like, I don't know anything about your personal life. I just know you on the software side. And I don't even know your work history, right? I just know what you've told me. And so there's that challenge of how do we come together and deliver this thing and do this and not crash and burn, because the goal is not to crash and burn and not to burn out anybody, right? So how do you deliver that last 20%? How are you dealing with that, Scott? How do you deliver that last 20% without burning out yourself or anybody?
Well, I try to make sure that I don't get on anybody's nerves. So there's been a couple times where I'll tweet to the team, or I'll do a direct message to the team. Hey, I'll say something to the effect of, what do you think your commitment is for the next 3 weeks or whatever? And like, I get crickets back. I don't get anything back. No one responds to my question. And like, I'll bite my bottom lip, and I say things that I know I shouldn't type, but I have to realize that, it's not all about me. And I mean, these people have responsibilities, they have lives, they have commitments, and, they're not getting paid for this. So they don't have to answer to me at all. And I have to remember, I have to basically remind myself of that
I do personally find those questions annoying. Not that I hate them. I find it a bit annoying. And I'll explain this to you live, right, on this podcast. And I think this is going to be a test of our current working relationship. So anybody, if you're listening, out there, if we end up fighting, now you know why. So I find that annoying because that's the kind of question I'm being asked by a project manager. So it's the wording. It's not the feeling behind it or the motivation, because I know the motivation. I understand it completely. But the wording, it just gives me like chicken skin, like it makes my hair, the hair on my back rise. And so it just makes me feel weird, and gives me a little bit of anxiety. It makes me a bit anxious, because now I'm thinking of like, wait, I have to now give somebody a deadline. Like I'm gonna have this done by Friday, but wait, what if something comes up and I can't meet it? So I get that anxiety of forgetting estimates.
I can understand that, but the thing is I asked that question because I want to know if you're able to commit for 3 weeks, or if you can't. And so if you can't and you get anxiety, then like I would hope that you would just say that. I will hope that everybody just says that. Something that I think has value is when, and I thought I heard DHH say this, or David Hannemeyer Hansen, when you place arbitrary deadlines on an objective, that I would think that kind of encourages motivation, even if it's arbitrary. Mm-hmm. And so the intent is to figure out who is willing to challenge themselves to sprint for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks to really try to get something done.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to understand is, does anyone else have the itch or the surge of motivation for the next 2 weeks that I have?
No. I have it.
And that's pretty much what I'm doing is
I have it. It's just, we come back to that death by 1,000 paper cuts. So you ask, like, what's your commitment? And I personally understand commitment as saying, I'm going to deliver the WordPress integration by Friday. And then I sit down and start trying to build it, and start bumping into issues. And I start bumping into issues. Then I realize that hey, I need help on this, and so I have to ask somebody a question or somebody for help. And everybody's been really helpful. But if we don't figure out within ourselves, that means that then I'll have to ask a question and Stack Overflow, and then go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that starts to build up in the back of my mind, like I'm not gonna hit that Friday deadline or that Friday goal. And so like I gave my word that was going to be done by then. But because if you ask me to do this on Python, I could finish Nikeza by myself on Python. I could do it in probably a weekend, honestly. Like the backend, yeah, sure, no problem. Because I know the ecosystem, I know the language, I know the frameworks, I know the documentation. I have enough working experience with it to feel confident. But I'm not confident with the technology that we're using, and so I can't commit. And that's why you get crickets out of me. I don't know any like the other members because I cannot talk, for them, but it's this process of working through death by 1,000 paper cuts and feeling the pressure of having 3 days or 4 days straight of absolutely no progress or very little progress, and having that goal looming in the horizon.
I mean, that's what you think is no progress. You're not even considering everything that you've learned. You're not even considering all the points that you've accrued by asking questions on Stack Overflow.
Absolutely.
Experience is knowing what not to do. I'll be the first one to tell you that. So, like,
I'm learning a ton, but listen me out. Okay. But I cannot deliver my knowledge. I need to deliver the code.
I think it's more philosophical than that. All right. So, for example, I do. Have you ever redefined what normal means to you?
Normal is what I pretty much decide it is. I don't live by other people's standards in that regard.
So in the past, have you redefined what normal means to you? Redefined. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like, I'll give you a good example right now.
Okay.
I pretty much dress the same way every day.
Okay.
That's it. Like, I use not the same pants, but I buy like a multiple pieces of clothing that are shirt. And that's what I wear. That's it. So, and people that I know that's not normal for others. Like, everybody likes to dress up, but for me, clothing is that's my normal.
Let me disclose how I've redefined normal for my lifestyle. Okay. Normal used to be making like 60,000 a year and thinking that was balling out of control until I moved to Miami. Now normal is like, if I'm not making less than 100,000, then I'm very, very insecure, right? Something's not right. Normal is when you average half a mile running, right? You redefine normal by when you're training for a half marathon, you average 3 miles, every single time you go out for a quote unquote jog, right? What I'm trying to stress is when you put that workload on you, we can say the same thing about lifting weights and benching. I could throw up 135, on the bench and do sets of 15 and do 4 sets of 15, right? Or I could do 4 sets of 225 and do that 5 times each, right? What happens after a while is when you increase the workload and you consistently do it over time, based on the amount of time that you've been doing it, I believe equates to what we say is normal. If you've been doing it for a long time, then perhaps that's now normal for you, right? So if we go back to, you know, having these arbitrary deadlines and increasing the workload and putting on that pressure, it's providing an opportunity based on your current bandwidth to test what normal what normal is in regards to you producing, right? So I butchered the way I attempted to articulate that, but
but I think it's
the
perfect.
point that I'm trying to drive is you don't know what you're capable of until you are put in a position where you have no choice but to do it. If you put me in front of 3 dudes and I'm backed in the corner of a nightclub and I have to fight my way out of it, I guarantee someone's getting laid out because I have no choice, right? And so again, when you put yourself in a position,
remind me not to hang out with you if I ever go to Miami. never hang out with you.
When you put yourself in a position where you have no choice but to swim or stay afloat, then I think you will realize your capabilities, and not only will you realize your capabilities, but you'll realize and you'll move, you know, what your current potential is into what you just recognize your potential should be. That's all.
No, and so there's this personality, not clash, but the differences in personality. Because the way I understood your point is that you're saying, you know, I take it as if I were training for a marathon, this project, right? So I'm putting in the time, I'm putting in the effort. I know that the first couple of weeks that I start training, I'm not going to go fast, right? Because I'm building up my resistance, not only in my legs, but my back, my lungs, right? My
foundation,
and so I understand that, and I agree with you. However, that's your personality coming into play. In my turn, from the perspective of my personality, you know me as someone who's very driven, and I think I've showcased that, right?
You have.
But I'm driven in a very different way than you are, and in terms of personality too. So I gotta find not only a goal that excites me that I want to get, but I have to find something to hold on to, and I cannot explain any further because I'm going through that right now. So it's not something I can really explain. Like, I have the goal, I have the motivation, but I need something to put some fire under my feet in order to really jump into it. And so what I feel is developing right now for me in the Lambda Cartel and on the Keza is that I'm getting the first sparks of that fire being lit, because I'm going through this death by 1,000 paper cuts of working with F#, .NET Core, Giraffe, and then you know, documenting the whole process. And so I think I will get there, but like a rocket, I have the fuel, I have the everything. I think it takes me a little bit to ignite, you know, to get that ignition going. Whereas from what I've noticed, you have this sort of where that's what I want, bam, you go 0 to 100 and you commit to it and you do it and you do it and you do it. So bringing those personalities into a coherent or cohesive, you know, sort of machine, it's the challenge. And I think that's why you don't get an answer when you ask that, because you're like, I feel that you're like, okay, I'm committed. I'm ready to do this. I want to do this by this day. You know, I'm here waiting, you know, ready to get into this. Sorry. You probably feel like, wow, like nobody else it may not be as committed or as I am, or they don't have the same approach.
Well, I just remind myself that, you know, they have different lifestyles and they have other commitments.
And
So
they're just different. Like we're all so very, very different, not only in personalities, but cultural wise. Because you and Scott are American. I'm technically sorry, you and Adam are American, and I'm technically American too. But I'm a Puerto Rican. I live in Puerto Rico. But you still within the same country, the same culture.
Miami's just really close to the United States.
Yeah, like you. No, but you live in Oakland, and so. But the fact that you're different races, you have different backgrounds. It's like if you lived in another country altogether, and that's something you learn when you live in the United States. You know, as I have, is that depending on your race, your status, like the place where you live, the country becomes very different. Your perspective becomes very different. Whereas in Puerto Rico, since there's a homogeneity of culture and people, everything feels sort of the same for everybody.
My perspective is perhaps just based on my life period. Is my perspective is that we have what we have because we deserve it. You know, for the most part, at least if you were born in a privileged country, you know. And so with that said, like, I have to deserve to take a break. I have to deserve to go on vacation, right? I have to deserve my paycheck, right? Like,
no, I don't see it as that. I deserve everything. I have what I go out and get.
My mentality is my mentality is when I'm training for that half marathon, I have to deserve to cross that finish line. I have to deserve to have that medallion put across my neck, over my head. Like everything, my whole mentality is everything that I want, I have to demonstrate that I deserve it. Massive and consistent action.
I think that's where we differ. That's where we split.
Yeah.
And so for me, like, I deserve everything. And that sounds really
entitlement.
You know, yeah, really entitled. But see it from this point of view, right? So I deserve everything because other people deserve everything. I think everybody deserves to be happy. Everybody deserves to be healthy. Everybody deserves to live a good life. And I'm not like pushing any political agendas. I just genuinely think that other people should be happy, right? It just stems from that. And so since I deserve to be happy because I am alive, then I get what I want. And so maybe that spark that I was talking about is finding within the goal what it is that I want. Finding that thing that motivates me. And that's something that it is the hardest thing of this project, which is recognizing these differences between each one of us and then playing those as strengths. Because now that people will know that about me, because, due to the fact that the opportunity came up to talk about it, people can now leverage that as a strength, and I can too, and maybe use it to our advantage. And like, I know your strengths now. I know how you're seeing the world, so I can leverage that to our advantage as well. And it's I guess our delivering this Nikesa project and delivering everything that's going to come out of it, because I think we're not only delivering an open source project, but we're documenting it. We're delivering a content experience as no one else is doing right now at all, right? Nobody is podcasting about it. Nobody is blogging about this sort of thing. Nobody is documenting the way that we are. And so delivering all of the things and getting to that, getting past that last 20%, it's going to be not only a play on our skills, but it's going to be a play on our personalities. And the fact that we don't have a de facto organizational, schema where somebody is the boss and then you have the employees, right? Because everyone pretty much has the same amount of weight and clout in when it comes to decisions. I think that's going to be the challenge to solve for that last 20% in terms of Nikeza. When we come out of that, and not if, because I'm convinced that we are going to come out, at the other end, we're going to be equipped to just take on everything or anything.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to blow up, and I'm not talking, and I'm not trying to get ahead of myself, but this is going to blow up because, I'm just itching to turn my WordPress code into a library and to deliver a library for .NET Core 1.0.4 that actually makes it easy for you to get an XML feed and parse it and turn it into JSON. I want to deliver that library because I know I will use it in the future.
I want to deserve to have a Lambda Cartel t-shirt in which it's predominantly black with the logo, and each project that we finish, get a new t-shirt with the name of that project printed on that, or stamped on that shirt.
I'm gonna go farther than that. When we finish Nikeza, I'm gonna have some medals made, like on a marathon. We have the Nikeza medal.
There you go.
and I'm stealing that from a friend who works has a Python project. Every time you make a worthy commit to his open source project, he gives you a coin, a very beautiful coin that you can take with you. It's sort of metal, in terms of something tangible. But I mean, I'm okay with the t-shirt too. So,
yeah.
We're about 10. We have about 10 minutes left.
Let's try to do it in 5. I gotta ride out.
Okay, let's do a 5 minutes left. So to rewind, we've talked about that how the last 20% of a project takes 80% of the time. How we see open source as a gateway to our creative freedom of sorts, right? And as a way for us to demonstrate our real skills, because for some reason or another, we don't have the ability to do it in our day jobs, or some people don't have that ability. We've talked about how you see this as a marathon, whereas I also see it, I see it more as, I didn't say how, but I don't see explicitly as a marathon. Maybe I think I see it more as a triathlon of sorts, and how we're just getting killed by all these thousands and thousands and thousands of paper cuts, because we're breaking ground here. We're actually going into new territory, a lot of undocumented territory. So what do you think is the biggest take that you're gotten from this conversation?
The biggest take that I've gotten from this conversation is that I think it's time we finally do a call to action. So what episode is this?
This is episode 8.
All right, episode 8. If whoever's listening has listened to more than 3, or if whoever's listening has listened all the way to this point, and you're still here.
Yep, I mean, that's a big if you're still here.
What you are observing is a different perspective, a different view of people that are passionate about building software development. They don't show us on TV. They don't show us in magazines.
Not yet.
Right. You may hear of some of us on podcast shows. Hence, Developer on Fire has been really good.
I've been published in a magazine before, so
yeah. Well, I haven't, right?
I've been there, yeah.
So you have Hanselman, you have Developer on Fire, you have Test Talks, right? But I still believe that mainstream still takes up the majority of or pretty much the media still will convey software developers and the struggles or challenges that they have as whatever a mainstream software developer looks like, right? Now I'll leave that up to you to decipher what that means. What this is we have people of different ethnicities that are communicating from thousands and thousands of miles away. And I guess to make a long story short, if you've been listening to us for this long, or if you've been listening to this specific session for the hour that we've been talking, then maybe you should share that with other people. Maybe we should start changing the face of what mainstream looks like, and maybe we should start advocating that, hey, I don't know about you, Pablo, but people think I'm smart, but they didn't always think that. I developed myself to get to this point of knowing how to solve problems, and so with that said, I want other people that may think that software development is out of reach because they don't talk like what they see in TV, or they don't look like what they see on TV. Like I want this to be accessible for everybody, and with that said, people will start to see what a developer may look like, may talk like, and how intelligent they may come off, only if they're able to observe that people that are doing it, have something in common with them. I know I butchered that, but basically, to make a long story short, I think it's time for people that are enjoying this podcast to start sharing it. Like it on YouTube, retweet it, send a text to your friend, and support us. And if you're really feeling this, then you should, let other people have value too. So I'll butcher that too. Anyway, that's it.
So the call to action would be to help you break into mainstream by supporting, this project. And we're not asking you for money. This is not an economic request. We're asking you to share on social media, to talk with your friends, and that, and to support what we're doing, because at the end of it, what we're going through is what everybody goes through. We tend to think that what the average developer, with in your own words, what the mainstream developer looks like or goes through, what we tend to think they have it easier than us, but at the end of the day, people still face challenges, and even if someone may have it better than I have, they'll still go through similar challenges. And I feel this is a learning opportunity for everybody. And that's why we're documenting this, right? So to jump into that call to action, share the podcast, talk to your friends about it. And if you want to be on the podcast and talk to us, if my call to action would be, if you listen to this podcast and something caught your attention, and if you want to discuss something, then email us, lambdacartel@gmail.com. And I know that agree. That annoys Scott. We will have an official sounding email address soon, but that one is available. Or we're at Lambda Cartel on Twitter. Send us a message. We'll have you on this podcast. Talk to us. Be a part of this by getting involved in how we document our process. And so, with that in mind, this has been episode 8, and we are 2 episodes within my goal of having 10, which is a huge deal, right? Having 10 podcasts. Doesn't matter how many people listen to it, just having 10 podcasts, like 10 episodes, it's a huge thing. So we're within 2 weeks of that. And I mean, we're achieving goals left and right here, even though we don't really realize them. So thank you for listening. This has been the Lambda Cartel, Scott Nimrod, and Pablo Rivera. We will see you very soon, and you will listen to us or view us on TV soon, hopefully.
This has been the best episode yet.
No, not really. The best episode was, so if you're still listening, the best episode was episode 7, where we removed a lot of our, just we're comfortable with the fact that we're broadcasting this publicly. And we're getting rid of our formalities and getting rid of our, we're breaking our belief system, like you say, like tear that down. And so we're coming out of our shells, and I think episode 7 was amazing. This one, I'm starting to go the other way.
I'll say that because you said that at the end of every single podcast.
I know.
Well, I'm ready to get off, man. So let's hang up.
All right. So this was the best episode ever, and we'll see you soon. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Deuces.